Today, there's a lot going on, including some technical analysis that I'll show you at the end of the video. We'll also be talking about a lot of important things, like how I think the price of XRP could go from where it is now to $4.00. Now that's out of the way, let's start the video. Let's start with the most important things that are going to happen this week. Please keep in mind that none of this is financial advice. Things tend to move slowly on Saturday and Sunday. Only big things happen when there is a black swan event, which has happened twice in the last 5 months. Other than that, things are pretty calm right now, which is nice every once in a while. Before we go on break, I wanted to let you know that this week is full of important events. These include the consumer confidence data, the Fed minutes meeting, the April PCE inflation data, and on Friday, the consumer mood data. All of these will give us a lot of very important information, along with the US Q1 GDP numbers. This is pretty much what we're looking at. Based on what we know from the past, markets will likely rise a lot very quickly if GDP data is very strong, inflation is very low, and buyer confidence is high. Of course, nothing is certain when it comes to investing, but I have found that understanding the past is very helpful. These dates will give us a lot of interesting information that will help us figure out what to expect in the near future. But there are other things going on that need our attention, like Trump's trade wars, Scott Pant, and a lot of big statements being made about digital assets. With that in mind, let's start by talking about how many countries are under a lot of stress right now, but Japan stands out the most. Japan's economy is in bad shape right now. In just 45 days, Japan's 30-year government bond yield shot up by a huge 100 basis points, hitting a new high of 3.2%. In just 6 weeks, the value of over $500 billion, 0 cents worth of safe 40-year Japanese government bonds, dropped by 20%. That's crazy. This should be a very important wake-up call for the Japanese people. People in Japan were told by their government to buy bonds because they were safe, would do well, and would help them retire. Now those bonds are falling apart, which doesn't look good for the people who bought them because their money's being lost. Those people will naturally look for other ways to keep their money, which is what bonds are all about in the end. I think this is the start of a huge movement in Japan where people say, I don't trust the government to handle our debt yields, bonds, or economy. I'm going to look for another way today. Some older people might go to gold, which is something many people have done before. Others might say Bitcoin is one of them. There's no longer any need to worry about we don't know how people will react because the news hasn't come out yet, but they'll do something if they're smart because the system is basically about to blow up. The way the loan system works there is pretty much like a big Ponzi scheme. Things will get a lot worse over there as soon as people start selling, getting scared and leaving. Right now, they're depending on investors to keep the economy going, which isn't a good way to run an economy because it makes Japan very vulnerable during times of stress like now. That's why I think different money systems are the answer. Not only that, I believe XRP is the answer, but that's just what I think. It looks like some people are putting their money back into US credit funds. This means that China is experiencing deflation and the US bond market is collapsing. Europe and many other countries are having a hard time with their finances, but US credit funds are doing really well. It's cool that US investment grade and high yield corporate bond funds got $9 billion 0 cents, which is more than they lost for the first time since March. The 4-week moving average of money coming in went up, which is a big change from the second week of April when $28 billion 0 cents was sent out, which was the most since 2020. The high yield corporate bond ETF has gone up by 4.5% to 5. Since April 8th, when it hit its lowest point, the US high yield corporate bond market has dropped 1.37 percentage points to 3.2%, which is close to the lowest level seen since the last week of March. While other bond markets are going through the roof, the US corporate bond market is finally leveling off. This makes sense since most other countries' economies aren't as strong as, after all, they have a lot of power in other countries and they may have thought they had too many cards in this race, but The US might not have as many. It is important to keep an eye on what the US does because they have the money to back up anything big they want to do. That is something you should definitely do. This is what Secretary Basant just said. Pay close attention because this is crazy, especially stable coins. I've seen estimates that stable coins could quickly increase the demand for US treasuries and treasury bills by $2 trillion, 0 cents. To put that number in perspective, you're probably going with about $300 billion, 0 cents right now. The message is clear. We're going to push for safe coins and rules for digital assets because it will be good for treasury bills if we do this. Just ask Eric Trump or anyone else who works for Trump. A lot of people will use the US dollar even more because of it, which is great. This helps the dollar stay strong. And it's a new way that the dollar is used to control things outside of banks. That's really cool. And you might think this is great. Also, this will be good for XRP since the RLSD is so close to the US government. World Liberty Financial says that XRP is likely to gain the most from these kinds of news stories, maybe even more than US. Eric Trump, who was Donald Trump's son, has a new show. This could mean that he gets extra care, but we'll have to wait and see. RALUSD is going to play a big role. There's no question that it's interesting to see what other people are doing here. So let's look at Michael Saylor in this case. This is a map that shows how much Bitcoin he's getting right now. That's silly because he bought a lot during the bear market and now he has like tens of billions of dollars in unrealized gains. He doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. And this is pretty normal right now. Michael Saylor will either be remembered as a living hero or the biggest fool in history for putting money into old technology. We still don't know what will happen here. That being said, I don't think Bitcoin will always be the best. Cryptocurrency will always be the number in terms of size and market value. You've known about crypto forever. It's cool to see all the billions of dollars coming in from institutions, regular people, and people who are just buying a lot of crypto right now. But I think that over time, something better will take the crown. Like Bitcoin, other cryptocurrencies haven't seen as much price change, which brings me to my next really important point. Bitcoin has seen a lot of price change. The last 3 bull runs I've been a part of have been a lot like this one. Altcoins run after a few months. Bitcoin moves after a few months. There is no one running altcoins right now next month or 2 months from now. If someone had a crystal ball and knew for sure when altcoins would run, they could tell you they would be a billionaire because they could open a 100x long position right before it happens and become a billionaire right away. Here's how it works.